and welcome to another episode of the Wine and Chisme podcast. Welcome to 2025. It's like crazy. If you hear anything in the background, I'm gonna let you know, Carrie. My dogs are on the couch. They sometimes will be very beautifully behaved and such sweet angels and just stay on the couch. And then other times you start hearing stuff in the background, and because we've moved things, around, I couldn't access my headphones. So
Oh,
if you
okay.
hear that, so yeah, so if you
I
hear
want
like
to see them.
I'll show you them later. Right now, the little one is knocked out, and our pit bull is licking himself.
They do that, right? It's such opportune times. You like
Yes.
look over and
And
you're like,
it's
oh, you're doing your thing. Okay.
no, I should have brought a sweater out. It's cold, or it's so like it's not cold outside, but it's cold in my apartment.
Mm.
Uh,
Thanks for a
so
blankie.
yes, so mi gente, I'm like just starting and everything. Let me tell you who we have today. We have Carrie Peralta. Carrie, she after 2 decades as a technical recruiter and talent strategist for leaders like Netflix, Google, Verizon. She has dedicated herself to empowering Latinas and other underserved communities in their tech careers by uncovering their unique strengths and motivators. She's here to help them thrive in their careers and live the life they desire in their peak state. I love that. I love that. I'm super excited to have you because like before I even hit record, I was like, oh, even what I do now is technically like a tech job. But there's so many things that I think when we think of tech jobs, we don't realize they're tech jobs or STEM jobs. But before
Mm.
we get into that chisme, we always start with the wine. And I don't know if you are partaking or not. So if you are, please tell us what you're drinking. If you're not, please tell us what your favorite wine is, if you like wine.
Okay. Thank you. Well, hey, thank you so much for having me. This is so fun. I've been looking forward to this. This is like such a great way to end the week today. Um, I've gone through lots of wine phases. I think like when I was new to wine, I started with white wines, all the fruity ones. I just hadn't
Right.
built myself up yet. And then I kind of came full circle like with the cabs and went back down to like Pinots, where I was like, let's do light reds and then Zin. So honestly, my favorite are reds, and I love red blends.
Okay. And
Blends are
there's some
so
really good red
fun
blends.
because I just
Yeah.
feel like there's so many things. And then I'm super biased and super partial to California wines. Like I'm just a California wine snob. I'm like, they're just that good. Like they're so good.
Yeah. You know
Yes.
what? I love blends because you do like it's almost like it takes a little ride on your tongue, right? You taste all of these different things when you have a blend because it's not just one. I mean, there's amazing things. So are you drinking today or not?
Okay, so you're gonna laugh because I was like wrapping up meetings and I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta get like some wine together. So I have some queued up, but like lately I've really been into ciders. I've been drinking like
Oh,
pineapple cider, apple cider. I've just been
oh,
super
nice.
into, I even found a strawberry apple hard
Oh,
kombucha.
I've had that kombucha, the June shine. It's
Oh,
good.
good. They're
It's
really
very good.
good.
I've had that
And
one.
usually kombuchas are a little funky, if you know what I mean, where you open it and you're like, ooh, okay, we're gonna do this. But but I've really been loving ciders lately. So I think I'm gonna have an apple cider, a hard apple
No, I'm
cider.
not laughing at all. I think that so my challenge sometimes when it's with ciders is sometimes they're like too sweet. So
Oh
I'm
yeah.
always yeah, so I'm always looking for something that is just really dry. A cider that's
Mm.
dry. Like I want the obviously the sweetness, the crispness, but sometimes it's just overdone for me. But that kombucha that you were showing me is so good. I love the June shine. It's very, very good.
Well,
Well,
you
to
know what? Since you said that, I'm gonna switch it up then and do this one. So the audience who's listening can hear this is legit. I'm like cracking it open. Salud, cheers.
salute. So, well, but I'm having Herencia del Valle. They're one of our longtime supporters. I'm having their, I just opened the bottle like 45 minutes ago, so I've been letting it breathe. I'm having a
Mhm.
2013 Merlot out of Napa Valley, and I was like, you know what? I want to warm up. Let's let this wine warm me up. So yes, salud otra vez.
Yay, what a beautiful glass.
Thank you, thank you. I think I got it like my sister. I have some really nice ones that my sister got me, but these like she got me the same ones that I had just gotten at like Home Goods.
Oh my gosh, I cannot be trusted with wine glasses, so mine are all stemless because I notoriously the stems break. I break them. I don't know. I just have not had good luck. So people used to buy me like the most beautiful wine glasses for gifts, and I'm like, don't do that because I feel like I break them. So now I just have stemless.
So let me tell you, I understand this dilemma because um one year my sister had gotten, because I have an espresso machine,
Hmm.
and one of the stores near me is they sell the pods. I think it, and my sister got me a gift card to the store. Well, the Nespresso store in Bloomingdale's, I think it's in Bloomingdale's, in Bloomingdale. I sound so bougie. I swear I'm not. That's just where it is. I'm like, it was a hand-me-down machine that they gave me a new one. The way I'm saying it, I sound so freaking bougie. I'm not. Um, but the Nespresso store in Bloomingdale's doesn't accept a Bloomingdale's gift card. Yeah. So I ended up going upstairs and bought myself a 4-pack of these really beautiful wine glasses. They all broke. Like, I mean, because the like it was the, so what they say is like the higher quality wine glasses, the thinner the
Yeah,
glass.
that makes
Well,
sense.
this is not thick glass. I mean, I've had some thick ass
Yeah,
glass,
right,
wine glass. These
right.
are not, but they were so thin that I constantly was panicked.
Yeah, yep.
And even just like, I'm a total traditional Latina woman when it comes to my dishes, right? I don't use the dishwasher. I use it as my drying rack. So
Oh
I
my
would put it in,
God.
and then nothing would even happen. Nothing would hit it because I don't use it. I'd open it up and it one a glass would be broken.
Oh, that is weird. Hmm.
Yeah. So I'm
Let's
just
talk
like,
about let's talk about the dishwasher being a drying rack later. We'll put a pin in that one.
yeah.
So many thoughts on that.
Yes. So yeah, so that's the situation there. But I want to kind of take it back because obviously we're going to talk about tech and Latinas in tech
Yeah.
and everything, but I want to kind of roll it back because I'm not sure you don't have to share your age. I just turned 47, but and you don't have to share yours, but I will say like growing up, I'm in that generation that grew into it, right? We had to learn tech, where
Mhm.
our tech was, you know, we grew up with computers, but not the same way that kids now grew up with
Yeah,
computers,
exactly.
where you literally had to type in control backslash this to
Yeah.
like you literally had to tell the computer what to do. It wasn't like responsive as it is now.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
Oh yeah.
You can say we
So
grew up in dial-up era. That's okay.
yeah, the dial-up era. Oh my gosh. Like, I mean, our first computer, let me share with you. Our first computer in our household, my mom had gotten from QVC, and it didn't even take a floppy disk. It took a cassette tape.
What? Really?
Yes. Yes. I mean, I
Yeah.
think it did have a floppy disk, but it had like a thing for a cassette tape as well.
Oh, nice.
So it was, I don't even know, like this is so way back, so way back, right?
You're
Like
like, it
I
takes hard
remember,
disks and your cumbia tape. It's all
yeah,
good.
exactly.
It's also doubles as a boombox.
Yes. So I want to know like what era of technology you grew up in and what growing up, what was like the gap in your household versus seeing it anywhere else. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. So I'm actually older
We're
than you.
starting strong.
I just turned 48, so I'm actually a teeny bit older, but also grew up when tech was in its infancy with like so I remember my parents, our first computer, it was such a big deal to get it. They went to the because my dad was former Navy and we went to the military base exchange because that's where it was cheaper to get a
Mhm.
Tandy computer that was the black and green screen where you're doing all these funky things with your fingers to do all this like it's like a DOS
To do all
operating
the
system.
commands.
And then so we brought it home and no one knew what to do with it. They're like, so my mom's like, well, you'll figure it out. And I'm like, okay. So I just started pushing things to see what would happen and like trying all the discs, the hard little disc and the big floppy disk. Yeah. So
Yes.
so I think like my parents knew it looked like it was important to have, but they weren't sure why, weren't sure what to do with it. No one like they really didn't have instructions. There was no YouTubing, you guys, back in the day, where you could go look up an instructional video on any of it, you
No.
kind of figure it out. And then you always like, you tap your smart cousin or whoever's the youngest person in your family because they are more tech savvy. Whoever sets up your VCR and your TV, that's who you ask like what to do with your
That
computer.
was me, and I was the
I'm like,
oldest.
that was me. Same, absolutely. Yeah. So I would say like I definitely had friends where like they had nicer things or different things. So I didn't, you don't always know what you don't know until you go to someone else's house and then you're like, oh, you guys have this, that, and the other. So yeah, I think all of it was just early tech years. So early adapters.
Oh yeah, for sure. Do you remember what um like do you remember the first time you kind of really figured something out using the computer and
Yes.
how that made you feel?
Oh my God. I thought I invented the internet. Like, so yes, I do remember I was writing a paper in high school, maybe college, it was high school, and I was able to put a graphic on the cover page. And I just thought I was like, you don't want to cuss on your podcast, but like
No, you could cuss,
just
it's
thought I
fine.
was the shit. I was like, oh my God, I have a graphic underneath my name, my what period, fifth period, the date. And I just thought it was such a big deal. And I'm like, don't ask me how I did it or if I can do it again. But it was this little graphic underneath the title page. So I thought it was such a big deal that I figured out how to do that. And then back in the day, there was very little editing that you could do in software. So like once I printed it out, I was one and done. I was like, oh my gosh, the fates were aligning for me. It had good page placement. And so I just remember that being such a big deal and not having to use a typewriter. So those of you listening don't even know what it's like to have a typewriter in your house with a tube of whiteout, which is what you use to correct your mistakes because
Yes.
you can't backspace delete. It's still there forever on a piece of paper. You have to use
Yes,
whiteout
but do
to
you
know it's
remember when
excited.
the electronic like we had an electronic typewriter.
Yeah, and it has the little eraser band, but sometimes it doesn't always erase.
Yeah. Yeah, well, so it had like a little thing, like a
Like a
oh my
display.
gosh, like a pager. Like most of our audience definitely knows these things, right?
Okay, okay,
So
good.
it had just like one little screen that you could
Mhm.
type, and if you made a mistake, you could erase it while it was still within that screen,
The
right? Because
little
it
display.
didn't technically type it out. But as soon
Yeah.
as you hit enter, then it
Enter
typed it all out. So if you messed up, you
forever.
messed up. And oh my
Oh my gosh,
gosh,
I
can you
have not even
believe?
thought about these things in so long. This is so funny.
I'm telling you, isn't this so crazy?
Yeah, because like our kids will never know this life.
My nephews, my nieces and nephews will never understand what
Mhm.
we went through. And we had to take typing class to know like
Yeah,
where I don't even know if kids today know how to like type, to be perfectly honest, because they're on their phones, everything's on their phones. But if they're in front of a computer, I mean, I would imagine there's no sort of typing class anymore. Do they really know that the F and J, like why those little marks are on the F and J
the
key?
little bumps. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So like, I think they use keyboarding because I know they do that over cursive because they don't even learn cursive anymore,
so crazy.
right?
I mean, okay. So, I mean, I remember, like I said, our first computer. I don't remember like my first thing, but I remember it being like in middle school and playing and go, when we got computer time, it was so exciting. So sometimes it would be to go and to we were typing up a report. Sometimes it was like to play Oregon Trail,
Oh
which
my God, yeah.
I found a site that you could actually go online and find like the old Oregon Trail
Oh my God, I haven't
and
thought of that.
play it still.
We had a game in our computer class called pizza. And I forget,
Oh,
I think
really?
the goal was to try to get toppings on the pizza. I don't know. That's so
Well,
good.
I feel like I'm gonna go "Tilly-loo-loo, tilly-loo, tilly" for the flashback.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I definitely like remember that. And then, but even when we did, like, I was in yearbook in 8th grade, and now all of that's done digitally and whatever. And we literally had pages that we had to mark sizes. We had to get the
Oh,
actual photos and place them on there and send them in to the printer. I mean, it is,
it's amazing we got anything done.
but you know
On
what? Okay,
time.
so I want to put a question out there. I don't want you to answer it now, right?
Uh,
So the question being, like, we're talking about all of these things that we had to do. We had to be resourceful. We had to be, and I know there's other ways to be resourceful. So the question I'm going to put out there that I do not want you to answer now is, do you feel like people today are less self-reliant because of the technology that we have today?
mhm. Yeah, that's a good
Okay.
question.
So don't answer that right now. I know you were talking about like you got this graphics and whatever. So when was the first, I want to just kind of keep pushing through that. When was the first time and what was the thing that really attracted you to tech? Like what was that, were those little wins like, ooh, I can do this, or ooh, I could do that? Like what was do you think at that point the seeds were being planted for you to go that way?
I do. So I always found everything related to technology like super fascinating, but not like in I wanted to be an engineer way because I wasn't like super strong at math. But I was just so curious about its ability to like for things to talk to each other and do things. So I always found it really fascinating. So I really kind of nerded out on a few things: technology, the stock market, and then history and cultura. I was super interested in like why did we become the way that we became and like what happened and what are the events that led up to this and like the civil rights, like all kinds of stuff. So I was just, I think, very curious. My parents didn't always foster that curiosity. They thought I asked too many questions, but I always just wanted to know about things. So I think it
Mm,
definitely piqued my interest. Yeah, I was definitely curious about all things tech.
yes, I get the history thing because that's how I was. I'm a big history person. Um, my parents, they did not go beyond high school.
Mhm. Same.
But you're like, what I was gonna ask, and so I'm glad you already said it, that your parents didn't always foster that. So what was their attitude towards tech and the curiosity that you were kind of forming and growing into?
Both my parents did not go to college, so same. I was a first. I'm second gen Mexican American, and my parents had not gone
Same.
to my mother's dad, my grandfather told my mom, why would you want to go to college? You're just going to get married. Like that's the way she was raised. So anyway, so I knew she wanted it to be different for me so that I would go to college. And so I knew right away, like, oh yeah, I want to do more. I want to learn more. And plus I'm just really curious. So I think that was good. So I think if you're saying like, how did that get fostered? I knew I needed to get like an education, but my parents' angle was more to get a good job, whatever is considered to be a good job, right? So it wasn't necessarily technology because they just didn't really relate to that. It didn't resonate for them, but they knew to get that good job, I would have a leg up if I had a degree, right? Because they didn't, and they knew like it's almost puts you at a disadvantage, or you just won't get as fast without the degree. So yeah.
So is that something that you continued in high school and college? Like, I'm just trying to figure out when that point was where you're like, I think this is the direction I want to go.
Yeah, that's a good question. So like, my dad was a labor union organizer. So like really young, I was really exposed to like fair wages, equal pay, things like these kinds of concepts. So I really like loved and appreciated like the work that he was doing in that way, which is to like make sure that people were represented fairly, which really, if you think about it, it's human resources. I was just doing kind of the other side, which is like the corporate side of it, right? So I knew HR was for me. I was really into it. And then my degree is in ethnic studies, where I studied all kinds of different cultures up to present day through history, right? And then because I really love technology, I was like, how can I like pull all of these things together? And so like I was doing HR internships while working a couple of retail jobs and waitressing my way through college, all the things, you do all these little things, right? Um, and so I knew I was like, that's the sector I want to be in. It was that or healthcare, because I was like, I want to help people. I want to help people. I love like this aspect of human resources where you talk about talent and how organizations set up their talent. So I kind of had some like inkling of like industries and sectors that I wanted to go into. And then as soon as I got my first taste of a tech job, my first job was at Intel as a temp. And they just took a chance on me. I mean, I was right out of college, like, little experience. But as soon as I was immersed in that world, which is like highly male, very engineering focused, I was like, oh yeah, this is on. Like, and it was like a love affair. I just loved all things that were like on the cutting edge. Yeah.
No, I love that just because, we all get exposed to technology in different ways.
Mhm.
And one of the things that we were talking about earlier was there are so many careers out there that are a STEM career that you don't even realize is a STEM career. And I know
Mhm.
that we really want to focus on, Latinas in tech and all of that. And I want to continue like the journey with you, but I want people to realize there's a couple of stats that I want to put out there just for people to realize like how important this conversation is.
Yeah.
Currently, there's only 8% of tech workers in the US are from the Latinx community. There's only two, apparently, there's only 2% of Latinas in STEM
Yep.
fields.
I was just gonna say, knock that number down for women. Yep.
And 5% of executive leadership positions and 3% of board roles in tech are held by Latinos.
Yep.
Now, even Latinos within tech, so this is as of 2022. Latino tech workers earn 3% less and 8% among Latinas.
Yeah, that number has not changed. It's maybe 1 percentage point off from last year's data. Yeah. And the
So
pay
I,
gap
I
is still really huge. It's 50 to 51% on the dollar for pay gap, even in tech roles.
yeah, 57%,
Even in tech roles.
57%.
Yeah.
Oh, in tech, it's even less.
It's
That's
like,
great. I
but I'm
mean,
just saying, like, it's not, there's huge, we have huge gaps right now still.
wine break. Time to refill that glass and come back for more wine and chisme. I wanted to put those out there because I
Uh,
wanted people to like understand how important it is. Because I don't think we've really talked about tech in a while. Um, and I don't know why, but we are now, which is exciting, which is
that's
exciting.
right.
We are now. Look, it doesn't matter what happened before. What it matters is what happens going forward, right? Because it's been a minute that we've talked about tech. So being into it, that's like a huge company. Now, like we were just saying, I'm second gen as well, second gen Mexican American. But I also, and we're both light complected. So
hmm
at one side, I always feel like people look at me like, oh, she's safe. She's safe. They have no idea.
I've been told that before. Oh,
Have you
you're
really?
not, oh yeah, oh, but
You're
you're
not
not
one
like
of
them.
those.
You're not like them. And I'm like, it's so annoying because you're like inside
Ugh,
it's all the same, but it's like
girl,
being
I am
classy,
them.
it's
What?
such
You
a
want me to
double
take off my
standard.
hoops?
Yeah. What? Funny.
Don't make me take off my hoops. I
Yeah,
will
that's
show
right.
you.
Don't make me call somebody.
That
Uh,
is no, that I mean, again, like I said, as a second gen, we often are many of us, especially when you're light complected, are often told like we're safe. You're not, like you
mhm,
said, you're not one of them. You're not this. So going into the tech field, being
mhm,
second gen, right? Because that does I think oftentimes, and not everybody, like I feel like I do have some people who are maybe second, third, or second or third, or maybe even fourth, and there's some disconnect, right,
Mhm.
with their culture.
Right.
Um, how was that for you when you worked in a place like Intuit, when you worked for places like Nike, when you worked for places, when you were making um these big moves, right? I'm not Nike, I'm sorry, Netflix is what I meant.
That's okay.
Verizon or whatever. How
Yeah.
did that feel like being a Latina in those spaces? And how do you feel like people observed you being a Latina in those spaces?
I mean, first of all, every single one of those, like, Intel, Verizon, Google, Netflix, all of them do not have leadership. And it's not to call them out. I'm calling you into this conversation, companies listening. Like, they do not have representative leadership. So you don't see yourself in the C-suite at all. You don't really even see yourself in the management level, right? So the people that I saw that look like me were going to be like your frontline staff. So like at Verizon, it's going to be the retail employees that are in the stores, right? Okay. But they're not going to necessarily be in like director or VP positions. And then same thing in the tech companies. It's mostly men. It's a lot of Asian men. So I think for me, I had a lot of imposter syndrome going to Google. I was like a newly divorced single mom, and I was really kind of scared. I was like, oh my God, is it gonna be super broy, like frat boys like doing coding and like keg stands? Like I didn't know what to expect, right? It actually was okay. It was better than I thought because it was Google does a really great job of fostering a very inclusive environment, and they'll say we want you to bring your very best self to work so that you can be yourself, however weird, however different it is. They want you to just be able to do good work. But it's also hard because at the same time you take pause in like knowing you're the only one in the room that looks like you, but like the janitors are brown, the people that are cooking and doing stuff in the cafes are brown. Like those are your people. Those are the people you're talking to, right? So not everybody is going to look like you. So you have to be like comfortable with the uncomfortable knowing there aren't going to be people that necessarily look like you, but there's something still inside me that knew is like, I need to be here. I deserve to be here. I've worked hard to be here. I still have value to add. So it's like that inner knowingness to be able to combat like those imposter syndrome thoughts. So
So
that's a good
as you're,
lesson, but
yeah. So as you, I mean, I want you to share all that stuff, right?
yeah.
I'm like, we want to hear. When you're going through each thing, were you in HR for every time you're doing it? So what were the things that you saw from an HR perspective,
Mhm.
right? That you felt like you could bring that nobody else could?
Oh, that's a good question. So HR has a couple of different functions, which is like employee relations. They do investigations, terminations. They're kind of like the police of the company, right? And then I was on the talent side, which is like, how are we going to get much needed talent into the organization to do this really great work that they're trying to do? So this is where I was finally able to answer my parents' question when I said, hey, I'm going to major in ethnic studies. They're like, what are you going to do with that degree? Like, what are you going to do with that? But that's all DEI. That's diversity, equity, and inclusion. Because I knew at my core, I was really passionate about bringing more women into tech, more women of color, Native and Indigenous people, the BIPOC community, even our LGBTQ brothers and sisters, like getting them into tech because they're highly underrepresented. And I knew from a recruiting perspective, that is talent that we have not captured, we have not tapped into enough that is going to bring in really diverse, beautiful perspectives, different life experiences, different education, different knowledge, right? So that's what I was really focused on. So those were always my like side projects. Like, yeah, I have a hiring quota. I need to hire X amount of this, that, or the other, but it's always top of mind for me to bring in represented talent, underrepresented talent. So that's where I was able to finally like pull those two things together with like HR, DEI strategy, and then being able to like provide these companies with just amazing talent with really great careers. And so it was very rewarding.
Speaking of DEI, um, was that something that was an initiative for each of the companies? Because a lot of companies are like getting rid of their DEI
Yeah.
initiatives, which is very
So
frustrating. Like it's very
mhm,
frustrating because it's like it's not there because to give people an advantage. It's there because they've always had a disadvantage. And I don't understand
mhm,
how people don't
right.
understand that. Like there were, I don't know if you've ever seen, there's this cartoon that I've only seen once, and I wish like but it was basically showing the difference between equality and equity.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
pretend
I know
there's,
what
it
you're
was
talking
like a
about.
parent, yeah, it's like a fence, and
Yeah,
everybody has the same, um, like apple crate to stand on, but
yep,
everybody starts at a different point. So even though everybody has an equal point, if somebody's a lot shorter, they still have a lot more to overcome to still to see
exactly.
over the fence.
Yeah,
Equity is giving everybody different sizes so they can all see over the fence. A
right.
different
It's
size
equal
apple cart.
access. Yes, it's
Yeah,
equal
so it gives
access.
them equal access so they can all see.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that gets lost in the sauce, so to speak,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
so often because people think, well, you shouldn't get an advantage, and they don't understand.
It's
Not
not.
everybody starts at the same spot. Not
Right.
everybody has access to this. So,
Mhm.
um, what were the things that you, and now with this, like all this stuff, a lot of companies getting rid of their initiatives. From a
Yeah.
tech standpoint, how do you think that's going to affect hiring and representation in an industry that already is so low in representation?
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's gonna be really, not to get political, but like I think it's gonna be really interesting to see like the next 4 years what's going to happen with not only the political climate, but like what happens like from a legal perspective on all these titles that like, the women and all of our foremothers and fathers that came before us fought so hard to get as far as like access to pay and discrimination and all kinds of things, right? And to see that dismantled is just, it's so heartbreaking because I think companies did a lot of DEI initiatives for a while. I think they were starting to scratch the surface. It was a very big ship to turn around, really, really big, right? Because it takes really systemic change. It takes really systemic leadership change to be able to echo that message and then hold people accountable to it versus it looking like a really nice marketing piece to talk about on a company website. Because this work really does matter, right? So like, I really do hope we can preserve some of the laws we worked so hard to put into place now. But as you're starting to see corporate America peel back DEI funding strategy, those types of things, um, I just really, really hope that it doesn't get dismantled too much for all the work that people have put into getting it this far, and for businesses to see the value add and the impact that diverse perspectives, diverse backgrounds bring to the table, right? Because it's like there's definitely studies and research that show that like women executives, women in the C-suite, Latinas in executive positions have business impact. They're giving you proven results that you're not always going to get from this one size fits all kind of white male leadership. So hopefully like the data that output the results will speak for themselves and companies will be really slow to pull back a lot of these DEI initiatives. So fingers crossed on that. We'll see.
Right. I know. I'm well, recently I found out a Latino organization that I'm involved with, they're going to be putting on an event in this year in 2025, and they were going to be working with a particular company, and now that they're rolling back their DEI initiatives, they're trying to pull back funding. And I'm gonna
Yeah.
call them out. It was Walmart. But
Mm,
I'm somebody who I don't shop at Walmart for the way that they treat their employees. I haven't shopped at Walmart in years anyways.
mm,
So I'm just letting mi gente, I'm letting you know,
right.
Walmart does not want to see our representation. Walmart also owns Sam's Club, so that means Sam's Club is part of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just sharing that. Um,
Yeah.
as people would go into these roles, or not necessarily even just go into these roles, because I feel like there's a lot of fear in just applying for these roles, right? Like
Yes.
you said earlier,
Yep.
we already have like, uh, we already have so many of us have imposter syndrome, right?
Mhm.
Even if it's
Yeah.
not all the time, we have moments of imposter syndrome. And it's said that if women tend to look at, if they don't hit every check mark, they don't
Yep.
apply. Men, if they hit 50%, they're like, I'm
They
good.
apply.
I have
Yep.
now I have now gone in. Now I'm hoping not that I don't ever have to go back to corporate again. I'm not gonna lie. I have realized, like, when I would go in there, I would say if I hit 100% of the requirements, I'm gonna be so bored
Oh,
because
I
what
love
is
this
there left
angle.
to learn?
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
when I started going into interviews with that attitude, they're like, what? Like, how?
Good.
And I'm like, well, no, I don't think I'm 100% qualified. If I was 100% qualified, I would really, to be perfectly honest, I wouldn't be applying for this job because there would be nothing left for me to learn and grow into.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I
And
love that.
it took me a long time to realize that.
Hmm.
Why? Like, when were you getting mostly like when you were seeking out people?
Hmm.
Because obviously people come, you get in and out, right? When you were seeking out people, what were the things, even if they didn't have a tech background, that you would notice that you were like, hey, I think this person would be good for this role, even if they didn't have a tech background?
Yeah, or even like an Ivy League education because like the competition in tech is really fierce. A lot of times I would just reach out, I would ask a few questions or just get on the phone with them. It's really powerful to just to talk with someone. The only challenge is like the volume is so high. It's like thousands of applicants, or thousands of applicants, right, to go through. But you're absolutely right about, I mean, there's been lots of continuous data and research that shows that like women just do not apply for jobs that they do not feel like they are mostly to completely all qualified. And we just talked about this in my group coaching program today is, one of my clients was saying, oh, I applied to X tech companies, like a small startup, and they rejected me 4 or 5 months ago. And so she's like, I'm not going to apply again. And I'm like, no, why would you do that? Like, because I was like, let's talk about that. Like, why? And she's like, well, they rejected me. I said, they reject you for that role. And who knows what that backstory is? We don't have any context, but it's so much less personal. I promise you, it's so much less personal than you think it is. That could have been an internal person. It could have been a referral that got hired. It doesn't make you less qualified because they didn't select you. It just means you have to keep trying again. And when you try again and try again, that repetition is going to lead to mastery because you're going to keep trying to go after it. They're going to see like, hey, they keep applying. They really want to work here. Let's find out why they really want to work here. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's not a one and done thing. They're not rejecting you personally. It's usually based off of a business decision and almost has very little to do with you, unfortunately. But it's hard. That rejection is really hard. And we internalize a lot of that. It's like, you just don't feel like you're good enough or worthy enough. That's not true.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
happens to the
don't
best.
you think? Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking because before, right? Like before you actually had somebody looking at your resume. Now tech has
Yeah.
evolved and they're looking for all like there it feels like, in fact, I saw a story. I don't know if it was on the Today Show or if it was whatever, where like an HR person applied for a job at their own company because they wanted to see what was happening and they got
Oh
rejected,
God.
kicked them out. Because how do you get pat, like what's going on if somebody's like, oh, I'm getting rejected? I mean, I feel like that's with any job, but that's part of what's happening within technology, right?
Yeah,
Like people are getting rejected left and right. They're submitting a resume and 5 minutes later they're getting a thank you but no thank you.
yeah,
What do you do? How do you like? I feel like so many people have experienced that. I know I've experienced that before, and it just becomes so frustrating that you
it
want to pull
is.
your hair out.
It is 100% it is. There is such a thing as trying to beat the ATS, the applicant tracking system. A lot of AI is being used in these things, but the job description is your roadmap. These are your little breadcrumbs, if you will, to let you know what that company is looking for. So it is going to mean you have to take the time to tailor your resume per role or per company so that you can be the one that most closely matches that. But I say use the AI against the AI, which means like pop your resume in along with the job description. You can add both of those links in and say, how can I refine or optimize my resume to better align with this role description? Just let it work its magic. You can take it or leave it. You can always go back to your original resume, but use the bots for the bots, right? So that you can try to match more closely with by being truthful, like make sure that it's all things that still apply and are relevant to your skills and experience. The other thing is applying online is a thing. You do have to put yourself out there, but a lot of it's going to be your network because you are going to get rejected. I have been rejected from companies several times, right? I didn't always nail every job I applied for. No, there's just no way. That's just the way that the game is played, right? But it's also leveraging your network, making connections, talking to people to hear about those opportunities before they even get posted out for the public for everyone else to see. Now you're competing with everyone else. So I think your network is really powerful, and it's one of the most like underutilized superpowers that we can have.
You know what I've done before is I've like there was a company that I really wanted to work for, and I looked them up on LinkedIn and started following some of like an HR, maybe a couple HR
A
people,
leader? Yeah,
the
yeah.
CEO. Like I
Yep,
started following several of them and would like comment on stuff and
yep.
and then I don't always post on LinkedIn, but then I was like, okay, what are they posting on? What could I write on LinkedIn that would
Mhm.
correlate or whatever? And somebody eventually reached out to me.
Look at
Um,
that. It's
because
that's
they were like, oh,
awesome.
we see that blah 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 blah. It didn't
Yeah,
end up working out because I there wasn't anything local anymore. It would have to,
mm,
but just the fact that I was like, oh my gosh, this works.
it really does. It totally does. Yeah. We call it like priming the algorithm. So like LinkedIn wants you to do everything on LinkedIn. They want you to engage, they want you to post, they want you to comment. And the more that you do that, it's going to optimize your performance and it's going to start feeding you things that you want because it's based off of your behavior. So like the more that you do that, it really can be super valuable. And it doesn't have to be crazy. Like even if you just set aside like 1 day per week, I'm going to go in and just like do my LinkedIn activity. You can totally do it that way too. Yeah.
I think people when you think of tech or when you think of STEM, people automatically think of an engineer or
Yeah, for
coding
sure.
or this or that. And there's so many options within that because just because you're not coding doesn't mean you're not in tech. Like I said at the beginning, this is tech,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
What running a
And that
podcast,
works,
that's
that works twofold. So let's talk about that because every tech company has a marketing department, an accounting department. They've got, they have all your basic business functions that are non-tech at a tech company. But that also works in reverse. Every travel, hotel, tourism company, every healthcare company, even the garbage company has a tech person somewhere that's doing like the IT or the systems or the tools or tracking a database somewhere, right? So even your non-tech companies still have tech positions. So that works both ways. Like it doesn't have to be like a super sexy, like, Amazon or whatever it, could be for you. There's lots of different alternative companies, industries, and sectors that are still really growing, are still really stable in this, time of like layoffs and there's definitely lots of industries and sectors that can be a lot more stable that still have opportunity for you. So they don't always have to be your traditional big tech companies.
yeah. No, it's so true. It's so true because we think like I don't know, we've been programmed, pun intended, that when you think of tech,
Funny.
you think of the tech companies, right? You think of
Right.
Google, you think of Amazon, you think of this, but there's so much more. I want like so recently I went to New York and I went to visit RGNY, the only Latina owned winery in New York. And I was sitting down with their winemaker and he was talking about stuff. And I was like, you know what? This is technically a STEM job because you need science and technology and all of the. He goes, yeah, because people don't think of like
Mhm.
making wine as a STEM job, right?
Yeah,
And
it's a science. Yeah.
yeah, you have to do all of these things. Um, so I was like, oh my gosh, what an amazing way to like bring those people who like wine and would love to work in wine but don't know how, right? What an
Mhm.
amazing way to like bring those people in. The other part of it is, people our age, women our age, Latinas create jobs that are opening businesses at a faster rate than any other demographic.
Yeah.
And so often it's like, well, I'm too old to do this. Maybe I'm not too old to start a business, but I'm too old to go into tech now.
Mhm.
Do you still hear that? And what do you tell those women if you do?
I do. Every so often I do. But I mean, your attitude is everything. So I always will tell you, you have to decide on yourself first, and then I'm going to push you to double down on deciding on yourself. So that's the attitude you already have, like, I'm too old for this. You've already decided that it's not going to work out for you. So if you can shift your mindset and you can refocus and say, I have value to add, I have valuable skills and experience, I have really amazing strengths that are transferable to this industry in tech. and look at it that way. And then ask yourself, what do I need to learn? What do I need to develop in my skill set to get me there? And then you go for it furiously, like your career depends on it.
And once you get in there, advocating for yourself is huge.
Yeah,
So
that's another big one.
how, how do you advocate for yourself in this place where you feel like you don't see anybody else like you or very minimal people like you? You're you know, as particularly if you're a woman, right? Particularly
Mhm.
if you're a woman of color, even more so, right? How do you feel, how do you teach people to advocate with them for themselves without feeling like, because I've been told I'm abrasive, I'm too loud, I'm too much, right?
Yeah.
And I know that so many women have been told the same thing. So how do you advocate with your for yourself without being told that, or without that trauma of being told you're too much, you're too abrasive, you're too loud, you're too this, you're too that, to come up?
Yeah. Yep, that's a great question. I love that you asked this question. So, like, when you think about advocating for yourself, I would say, one of the first things I work on with my coaching clients is like, we have to take stock of you. We need to understand, how do you work? What's important to you? What are your values? Where are your strengths, right? And how can we optimize from there? So, just to be able to pause and just truly understand yourself takes a lot, because we're in like such a busy go dynamic culture that's very fast paced. We're really good at, especially Latinas, we're really good about being doers. We're doing, but we have to really have that knowingness about ourselves, that beingness about ourselves, so we truly know ourselves and our skill set. But then also too, I would say the second thing is that you're not alone. And so many of us are really good about being a little stubborn and saying, I can do it myself. I don't need anybody to help me. I can do it. I got this. And it's true, you do have it, but you're going to go further and faster with more support. So I would say getting coaching, getting mentorship, getting allies in your corner that can help to elevate you, to help upskill you, to get you into rooms where you don't have access to maybe. Um, and that mentorship is just indispensable, right? Some of those things that that person who mentors you, or, even if they're just an ally, is going to help you when you think about like, what skills do I need? What conversations do I want to talk about? What are some areas that I need guidance on that this person maybe can impart some just little nuggets of wisdom to you, right? So not going it alone and being open to getting support via your network, mentorship, allyship, I think is gonna be really, really important. To have that comunidad is gonna be something that's really special. And it definitely feels less lonely when you're like, oh, other people have been here before. This is what's worked for them. Or they impart really good guidance and advice, or they help, introduce you to other people to make connections. And those two things right there of taking stock of your skills and your strengths, getting that allyship and mentorship is going to help you with your confidence, so that when you do need to advocate for yourself, you're going to know what you want. You want to know what your values are. You're going to know what you're striving towards. And you've got like a community that's got your back, and that feels really good, right? So those are the things that we'll tend to run towards or thrive a little bit better in when we have some of that support.
Support is key. It's so vital, because I feel like if you don't feel you're supported by any, right, it doesn't have to be your family, it could be friends, it could be a mentor,
Yeah,
it could be, you need to have a
right.
support system, because I think that just makes everything so much harder.
Yeah.
um the per say, okay, I got the job, I got the offer,
Mhm.
this is my first time in tech. Is this a good offer? How do I know if it's a good offer?
Oh my gosh, so that's a whole nother podcast. But yeah, so like I love talking about pay. Like I know people get really intimidated by interviews and pay conversations, but I love it. Like I can't get enough of it, because you advocating for yourself in this way is it's like just showing yourself some love and saying like, hey, you worked your ass off to get here. You went to school, you put in the work, you did your time with your experience, all the and honing your craft, right? Please don't let it stop when you get that offer just because you've been on the market a long time, just because you've been rejected so many times, or just because your mom, your gente, your friends, whatever who's telling you, just take the job, just take it. It doesn't stop right there when it comes to comp negotiation. And knowledge is power when it comes to data. Go look up what competitive pay, market pay practices look like. There's lots of really good reputable websites out there that will give you like industry market trends for that role that you're going after and that you have an offer for, the amount of experience, the location of the role. These are all things called market pay practices. So you can get an idea of what that range is and where you fall in there. And then you yourself have to work on what's the salary range that you are comfortable with. And it really should be a range, right? So you'll know, hey, this is my ceiling, this is my floor. Always swing for the fences and go for that ceiling. Because then you can always kind of walk back knowing that you've got a floor, that you're not going to take anything less than this number, right? And I'm telling you, just negotiate your pay. All they can do is say no. And at least you know that you advocated for yourself by even just asking, just making the ask. And more likely, more often than not, you might hear a yes or some ways that you can negotiate other things. Because for everybody, it's not just pay. For some people, it's time and flexibility. It could be location because they want to be remote. It could be work hours. And there's lots of different negotiables. So I have a free download on my website, which is 5 tips for confident pay conversations. I'd love to give it to your listeners. But
Oh yeah.
it's just a guideline of like, how do I prepare for a pay conversation? Go to these websites, know this information, and then practicing the ask. Use your best friend, a trusted colleague, a mentor, an ally that you can literally go and pitch yourself when you're talking about that pay conversation. Because the more you practice that pitch, the more comfortable you get talking about pay, the easier it's going to flow when you go make the ask to that decision maker.
That is so, I mean, I don't think I was in my 30s until I realized like I started knowing how to negotiate.
Right.
And and, and now I realize like how much I've left off the table because no company is going to offer you the highest offer.
No, they're not. I'm telling you right now, they're not. And like, especially like in states like we're in California, legally they have to post a salary range on job
In
description.
Colorado, right?
Yeah, and so like there's like, Oregon, Washington, New York, there's certain states and they're all gonna start, hopefully getting closer to adapting this policy. But that even that range that they're posting is probably on the low end because they never want to like disclose to you that they're willing to pay more because then now they're on the hook for that number. So you have to remember that companies are protecting themselves when they put that pay range out there. So even if you go ask for that higher range, don't feel bad about that. Be unapologetic about that as long as you meet the skills and requirements and all that stuff. But yeah, so like, please make the ask. You'll be so glad that you did.
All right. I can't believe we've already gone through an hour, but I have a couple of like rapid fire questions I want to ask.
Okay.
Okay. I know it's going to be yours because you said so. What is one book or resource you'd recommend to our listeners?
One book, gosh, just one book.
You can give your resource. That's fine.
Oh, okay, yeah. So the five confident pay conversation tips, I think is a good one. I'm a big Brene Brown fan, so I think, Dare to Lead is one of my favorite books. Is like you definitely don't need a title to be a leader. There's ways that you can lead in the workplace. So I would say Dare to Lead by Brene Brown is definitely a good favorite.
What's one piece of advice that what's the best piece of advice you've received in your field?
Hmm. I would say, and it sounds kind of harsh, which is like no one's coming to save you. And when you really stop to think about what that means, it means no one is coming to save you. It is your job to take care of yourself, to advocate for yourself fiercely and unapologetically, because no one is going to do it for you. And if it isn't you, who else? There's no one, it's you. But you already have it all in your tool belt. It's all in there. You can do it.
Um, what is one thing you wish more people knew about tech?
Mm. It's more accessible than you think it is. Yeah.
And finally, I want to go back to the question I asked you not to answer. I didn't forget.
Okay.
I, and now I want you to answer it.
Yeah, you
Thank
said,
you.
are people less self-reliant
There we go.
because of tech? I wrote it down because I'm like, oh, I don't want to forget her
Oh,
question.
good. I'm glad you wrote it down because I forgot exactly what I said.
I think in a way it is kind of a hindrance because you don't have to use as much critical thinking and problem solving skills as you once did. And we can say that with confidence, knowing back in our typewriter days and our white bottles of whiteout days. We just didn't have
In
as
our
much of a
Britannica
tool.
encyclopedia days.
Yeah, so in a way, it does make us a little bit lazier, but in a way, it also helps to level the amount of access that you have to information. So I would say that's the silver lining, is it like, yes, it can be a hindrance because it makes it makes it a little easy, or might make us, a little bit lazier and being able to like go and find things, right? But in a really good way, we have much more access to information than we ever had before, right?
And if people are like still kind of like, I don't know what to do. Why would I need a coach to get into tech? Why can't I just apply? What would you share with them?
I would say even if it's not with me, get support. You're definitely not alone. It can be a really lonely place, and especially if you're seeking a job pivot, or even having a hard time promoting within your career, get that support and guidance, because the accountability piece is really important too, is that somebody can hold you accountable so that you're making incremental progress, like week over week over week, so that you can really move the needle toward that thing that you want.
And for people to reach you, they can go to PEAK statecoaching.com.
Mhm.
Same for your Instagram, Peak State Coaching. LinkedIn is Carrie M. Peralta. And excuse me, that one. We'll make sure to include all of the links in the show notes. Carrie, I
Yeah.
always like to give people an opportunity, if there's something that we didn't touch on, if there's something else that you want to add, to go ahead and add that now.
Yeah, I think just in the same vein of what we were talking about, which is like that you're not alone, like tap your resources, your comunidad, and like be really like open and curious about yourself. You're seriously so amazing if you just stop and take a moment to look inside, see what you really want, because your dreams, your aspirations are really, really important, and that shouldn't fall short at just you. And then being able to get like support and guidance with peers and allies, I think is so, so powerful. And you'll find that you get a lot out of it, just as much as, you give back to it.
Mi gente, you deserve that dinero. You deserve,
That's right.
yeah, like do it. Do it. If that's what your spirit is calling you to
There's a
do it.
reason. Yep.
Because there's nobody else gonna do it for you except you, right?
That's right.
Carrie, thank you so much for
Oh, this
sharing
was
all of
so
that. It was like
fun.
a lot of information very quickly, and that's why I wanted to like just jump into it. Um,
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much.
and yeah, thank you, and mi gente, until next time. Hola, mi gente. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Wine and Chisme podcast. If you would like to hear more wine and more chisme, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Saludos.